Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday As Bill Sees It meeting. This is a main share meeting, and today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome David G. from Oklahoma, who's come to share for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for general sharing or if you'd like to ask a question. Thank you, David. It's wonderful to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, my friends. It's good to see everybody this morning. My name is David Green. I am a recovered alcoholic, sober by the grace of God since August 8th of 1994. And for that, I am forever grateful. It's good to be here today. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you for asking me to share on As Bill Sees It Change. And praying and meditating about this over the last day or so, I really would like to build my story around what that was talking about, change, from drinking to sobriety. And for me, that started at a very early age. There was a lot of abuse of all kinds in my home. And from that brought a lot of shame, a lot of remorse, a lot of guilt, a lot of things that wasn't mine to carry at the time. And so as a result of that, I began to drink. I began to do other things that alter the mind, that really led to a dark hole, as most of us already know here. There's no need for me to go into a big, long line of a drunkalogue. A lot of times I will listen to speakers talk, and they'll talk 30, 35 minutes about the drink, or the drug and how it was, and then just a few minutes on recovery. I try not to do that because the teachers that I have worked with have taught me that the early members of Alcoholics Anonymous, the first 100, they kind of had a rule that they followed. They didn't call it a rule, but it was a rule. You had 10 minutes to talk about the drunkalogue. You had 10 minutes to talk about what happened. And then the other 30, 40 minutes, however long you had to share, had to be about God, the steps, and how those have changed your life. And that's what I'm looking to do here today. So with the abuse that also came a lot of violence, a lot of anger that I carried on the inside of me that finally manifested itself outwardly. When I was about 15 to 16 years old, I was taking a pretty good beating one morning from a stepfather who had created much of this abuse. And in a fit of anger, I hit him with a stick of wood in the head, and it killed him. It eventually led to his death. And so shortly after that, I was locked up, and I was to go away for a long time. And while there, I learned a lot of things that I wish I hadn't learned. But two of the things that happened to me that day, one is I promised myself that I would never allow another man to put his hands on me ever in my life unless I allowed it. The other was I would never trust a woman as long as I lived. And the reason being is my mother came out that day, and the abuse that had went on all of those years, she had never called the police ever. But that day she called the police, and I was taken away, and so the story goes. So I walked to a nearby park where there was a man there. I was very drunk and hungover from the things that I'd been doing. And he told me, "You're going to need to wake up," because the police hadn't come yet. And he was like, "You're going to have to wake up, because if you don't, they're going to find you in this state, and it's not going to be good." And I'm only going to mention this one time because we're in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but he stuck a point in my arm at that time, pulled the trigger, and that set up an addiction that I damn near never got rid of for my entire life. And so automatically I go on the run. In a short time I'm caught and I'm taken away. And then I begin to deal with the consequences thereof. Eventually I was to get out of there. It should have only been 4 years, but it ended up being 7. Because I don't like authority, and I don't like anybody telling me what to do and how to do it. But in that setting, you have no choice. So I got out shortly after that. I met a young lady from Lubbock, Texas, here in the USA. I began to run around with her, ended up marrying her. She bore me 2 sons. The first one I was completely drunk and high, missed it. The next time I was in a rehab facility. I missed the second one being born. So the story goes. My drinking, my using escalated. I began to run from the law. I ended up in the state of Indiana, which is about 1,000 miles, 1,200 miles from where I live here in Oklahoma. there, my drinking and using would go from bad to worse, begin to live on the streets. I mean, by this time she had left me, taken my sons. It was all gone. Everything was gone in a short time. I resented her very much for that. I wouldn't give her any peace. Every time she tried to date somebody and move on with her life, I'd met a bunch of wild men, kind of like myself, and we would kidnap those people, take them to the lake, beat them with rubber hoses, whatever it took to keep them away. So one day she came to me and said, "What will it take to get you out of my life for good?" And I said, "You got to give me the boys and let me take them back to Oklahoma." She said, "You're stupid. You are crazy. No way." And but eventually she did, but it was under the condition that they would come with my mother. That was short-lived. Once I got back here, I went right back to the same way of life. My mother met up with her, gave the children back. They went back to Indiana. It would be a long time before I would see them ever again. Out of the anger and resentment that I already had from my mother from the earlier days, coupled with that, what she had done, I set fire to her house and burned it with her in it. And, man, now I'm wanted by the law big time. And I'm going to go away for a long, long time, and I know it. And so I escaped to a mountain. I live here in southeastern Oklahoma. This is Choctaw Indian land. It's the territory of the Indian here. And so I escaped to that. I meet up with some outlaws that are going, it's like a sanctuary. You hear of sanctuary cities, but these are sanctuary mountains. And so I'm there. And in a short time, I sleep with the leader's wife and drunk on moonshine whiskey and high. I set the mountain afire, and now they're looking to kill me for sure. So by the grace of God, I escaped. I got down the backside. I ended up with a lot of full blood Native Americans here in Oklahoma, and they took me in and they began to teach me their ways. And I had tried many times in jail through that to get sober. I just never could. But these guys brought me in. They taught me their ways. They taught me the Native American sweat lodges. They taught me the smudging ceremonies. They taught me the Sundance. And there was one man there that was Alcoholics Anonymous. He set me down and began to explain the big book in a way that nobody ever had before. It caught my attention, like page 18 says, until that agreement is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. And that was my first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous, as outlined in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. So I spent about 7 weeks there to avoid going to jail. And I knew eventually I was going to have to face that. And so I came out, my ex-wife showed up, brought my 2 sons. I was able to see them for a short time, and I'm very grateful for that time because that's the last time that I would see the youngest one alive. They went away. They went back to Indiana. And in less than a year, the youngest one drowned in Lake Monroe, Indiana. And that was Labor Day weekend of 1995. It was about 9 months sober. I'm very angry, very pissed. I hate the world. I hate God. I think that he's got me sober long enough to let me see, all of this insanity that goes on with the small self, the mind, the narrative that I still have to keep a good eye on even to this day. So I go to Indiana and I attend the funeral, and she tells me, "Go ahead and take the oldest son back." And I said, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that at all." Now, she's a very crazy woman. We pick people like we are, or at least we do here. And then, so I end up bringing him back, but I'm not very present throughout the summer. And at the end, I send him home. At this point, I make a decision based on self that I'm going to drink. And so I head for a liquor store, but an intuitive thought jumps in on that. I know that that's God today. At the time, I didn't realize it. But what that thought said is they told you if you ever decided to drink again, you call before, not after. And so I can remember stopping by the grace of God, making a phone call and got a hold of a full-blood Native American. He was mean as hell. I mean, this dude had shot his dad. His nose had been cut off in a fight. I mean, he was just my kind of guy. I loved him. And then so anyway, I talked to him for a short period of time, and he called me to his home. I had to drive about 90 to 100 miles to get there. And once I got there, we sat down and he began to talk to me about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I thought, since I had went to a lot of meetings and I was there every time the door was open, that I was practicing the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. He made it very clear that day there is a difference between the fellowship and the program. I had been in the fellowship pretty often, but what I knew about the program as outlined in the big book was very little. Now, I'd read the book. I could tell you parts of the book, but I just didn't understand what he was talking about. So what he did was he sat down and he began to put me in the doctor's opinion. First thing he did was they had me to open to the first page of the big book. Or he asked me, he said, what's on the first page? And I said, well, Bill's story. He said, no, that's page 1. I'm talking about the first page. And so you know how the story goes. Eventually he opens it up, and of course there's nothing there. That page is blank. And he says, this is exactly what you know about the program. Nothing. You know a hell of a lot about the fellowship. You can say how it works under your breath. I hear all these slogans. I hear you saying in the meetings, but you have no idea what's contained in that book that will change your life if you will take the actions thereof. Now he's really got my attention. So he puts me in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. In step 1, he shows me that I'm powerless for 2 reasons, not 1. When I look at that step, I see 3 parts. Most people say, no, it's only 2. We're powerless over alcohol. Our lives have become unmanageable. But if you read the book, I'm powerless for 2 reasons, not 1. 1, once I put it in my body, I cannot stop. Once I take it out, I cannot stay away because I've got something within the mind that's called the obsession, the small self, that will always lead me back to. I will believe the narrative that is feeding me. I will take action based on that, and it creates a reality that is hell not only for me, but for everyone else as well. Now, my life is unmanageable for a completely separate reason. I have a gaping hole within me, and nothing can fill that. I've tried women. I've tried more women. I've tried more jobs. I've tried more jobs. I've tried trucks. I've tried motorcycles. You name it. I've done all that. Nothing fills this hole. And in fact, on page 43 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says this: at certain times, see, not all the time, but at certain times I will have no effective mental defense against that drain. That defense must come from a higher power. Well, here I have issues because I don't really believe in God. But the second step is not asking me to believe in God. I hear that all the time. We bring up step 2 in a topic in a meeting. Everybody wants to talk about how you believe in God. But read the title of it on page 59 closely. It says we came to believe that a power. It doesn't say we came to believe in a power. It says we came to believe that a power greater than self could restore me to sanity. So if I'm powerless in step 1, obviously my answer is power in step 2. If insanity is driving me out the door against my will, then obviously sanity is the answer. So both of those are found in the second step. The second step becomes the answer to the entire program. But in order to have that experience, I must work the other 10 as they're outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, not some bullshit I hear at a meeting and think, hey, that sounds pretty good. And I go try it and I damn near die because I use again. That was my experience. And so he took me to page 45 where it says, lack of power, that's our dilemma. See, not lack of choice, not lack of belief, not lack of trust, not lack of faith, lack of power. That's my dilemma. The book says I have lost the power, and if I've lost the power, who the hell got it? That's what I want to know. Who got that power? Well, that's the ego mind that we will talk about more here in just a minute. Now, this ego mind is a creator of nothing, but it demands credit for everything that's happened in my life. And that has been my story on and on and on. So he leads me into the third step shortly thereafter. I come to believe in that a power can restore me to sanity. When it talks about being recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body, alcohol is not mentioned there. Drugs not mentioned there. Food, lust, whatever the addiction may be, is not there. So I'll get into the third step. It says we made a decision to turn our will and life over to the care of God as we understood Him. And I said, I don't understand God. And he said, well, I don't either. Where the hell do you read that at? And I said, well, I hear it in the meetings all the time. God is, I understand God. He said, that's not what's in our book. In fact, it's underlined in step 3 and step 11. If you read it off the wall, it's God as we understood Him, not God as we understand it. Slowly, the change that you read about in Bill's story today is beginning to take place. Now I've went from from drinking to sobriety. Now I need to go from love to hate. How the hell do I do that? Well, I make a decision to turn my will, which is my thinking, my life, which is my actions, over to the care of. I'm not giving anything to God. It doesn't ask me to give my life to God. It asks me to turn it over to the care of God. As I understood Him, not as I understand Him. What I understood at year 1 was different from what I understood at year 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, now 30 years plus. what I've understood continues to grow as I grow through the steps as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the men that I work with today. Immediately thereafter, I was reluctant, but I took the prayer on my knees with that man. We went into the inventory. I'd done the inventory process in steps 4 through 9, or in steps 4, and then I worked steps 4 through 9 exactly as they are laid out, and I had a transformation, and it went from hate to love, as you read about in Bill's story here today. I began to love people. I didn't want to hurt them anymore. I didn't want to beat people no more. I didn't want to hurt women anymore. I didn't want to do that stuff. But what I failed to learn was steps 10, 11, and 12 as they're outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Shortly thereafter, I was to meet Charlie of Joe and Charlie, and that would become my next mentor in Alcoholics Anonymous and my teacher. And Charlie would introduce me into the book in a way that I could have never learned without him. There's just no way. And so he became my mentor. My life began to change, as you read about here today. All of a sudden, I went from drinking to sobriety. I went from hate to love. I went to all of these things began to happen to me. The miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous began to happen for me. But one of the things that I was never taught about either one of those men, we read through it, we looked at it, we even studied it a little bit, but no one had ever pushed the issue of me working steps 10 and 11 the way that they're outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as a result of not doing that, eventually we will fall back to sleep because we've had an awakening. We will fall back to sleep, or at least I did. Page 85 supports that because it says this: it is easy to rest on our laurels. Laurel is a past achievement. We're headed for trouble if we do this because alcohol is a subtle foe. And sure enough, something began to compete for my recovery. And the damnedest thing is it won out. And this came at me in the form of lust addiction. And that's something that I suffered with for 18 to 19 years in the program. Now, many good things had happened to me. I married a beautiful woman, very intelligent, degrees of all kinds. Got a beautiful home here. Got things I never had before. All of these things had happened for me, and all of a sudden I'm starting to hold secrets, live a life that's not valued by the principles that we live by here. And in 2019, at 25 years of sobriety, those things manifested. You see, the nature of a secret is to reveal itself. And we can bury secrets, but the problem is we bury them alive. And at some point, they're going to come out. Maybe a look, maybe a glance, maybe I swerve off the road and hit somebody not meaning to. Something is going to happen, and it's going to reveal itself. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I'll tell you this for one reason, because I hear speakers all the time that come in with as many years as I have, and all of their stories beautiful, wonderful after they got sober. It's beautiful. And that's great. I think that's great. I also think it's a lot of bullshit. If you haven't suffered from the small self in here sober, then you don't meet the criteria of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. How do I know that? Read chapter 3, more about alcoholism. It gives you 4 examples of men who were sober. The first one is a man of 30. The second one is Jim. The third one is the jaywalker, and the last one is Fred. These men were sober. But it says on page 31, if you read that carefully, it talks about the man of 30 who drank and died after 25 years. Well, in 4 years after that, so 29 years. But there's one sentence in there that catches my eye, and it begins to catch my eye all the way through the book. It says he fell victim to a belief. You see, that's what I suffer from. The self is made up of ideas, concepts, beliefs, attitudes. All of these things is what makes up the self. It throws these thoughts at me. And since I don't know how to practice step 10, I'm not watching for them. They slip in. I take action based on those things, and I create a reality. And then I suffer from shame, remorse, guilt. All of this stuff is going on inside of me, and I don't know how the hell to fix it except for to run back to a meeting and try to vent to a sponsor. That's all good. Don't get me wrong, but that's not what this program's asking us to do. For the real change, We need to be watching for that stuff daily. It says we vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. And as we cleaned up the past in the first 9 steps of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous in 2019, I went back through this work, word for word, through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I recovered from that hopeless state of mind that manifested itself with lust. So what's happened since that time? We went through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous just the way that I did with the elder. Not a whole lot of that changed in the first few steps, other than I seen through the Big Book, the ideas, concepts, and beliefs and emotions. I mean, hell, reads Jim's story there on page 36. He just thought he would stop for a salmon, thought being the key word. He just thought he would have some milk with his whiskey, So anyway, I began to see all of this stuff. This time when we got to We Agnostic, there was 3 exercises that I was introduced to that I had to do through the work. One was on page 46. It's a reflection exercise. The book calls it a starlit night. My experience with that was at the Grand Canyon in Arizona in 2010. I was standing there with my wife. We had taken a train and went up. We were enjoying some time, much needed time off. I was standing overlooking this beautiful hole in the earth, and I was in awe of God's wonder. I was just in awe. But Bill says it's fleeting and soon lost. And that's exactly what happened to me, because the next thought that came into my mind as I'm enjoying this is, if you get too close to the edge, you're going to fall off the end of this bastard and you will die. And fear hit me immediately. And when it did, I backed away and I lost that conscious contact. See, the exercises are setting me up to show me not to do this anymore. Immediately we go to page 47 in the Big Book. And there's a spiritual terms exercise, and I have a portfolio deal. I have a lot of stuff on YouTube and Spotify, and I have a portfolio that shows this. And so what this man had me to do, because it says this: do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. So he had me stop there. He said, that's an exercise. And he had me to take a sheet of notebook paper, and I have this all in templates now, but I drew a line directly down the middle of that page, making 2 columns, one on the left, one on the right. So my exercise was to ask myself, what spiritual terms did I have prejudice against? Well, that wasn't very damn hard for me. Jesus Christ is at the top of the list. Holy Spirit, Son of God, favorite son, all this shit that I hated all these years. That shows up immediately. But on the right-hand side of that column, it asks me this. Ask yourself what these honestly mean to you. Don't look it up in the dictionary to see what these words, what does this honestly mean to you? And I had to do this prayerfully. And when I done this prayerfully, what I began to see with Jesus, the teacher, the master teacher, I call him now, was that they told me he'd been whipped and he'd been beaten and he'd been killed, and it was all my fault. And if that's not what they said, that's damn sure what I heard. And I thought, bullshit, I can't accept that. I'll never accept that. And so at the end of that exercise, here's what I learned. It wasn't so much that I couldn't accept him and the other terms that I remember. That's just term. Hell, God is a term. Kingdom's a term. Hell's a term. It's all terms. But what they mean to me is what the real answer here is. So anyway, what happened to me was I began to realize that people who were wounded were teaching me about God and telling me if I didn't believe that way, I was going to die and burn in hell for the rest of my life. That's a lie. That's bullshit. That's not the truth. They're wounded, same as me. So their conscious contact with God was not too much better than where mine was at. But I believed these people. And here's what I came to learn. It wasn't that I couldn't accept him or the other principles. I just couldn't accept the way that they were being presented to me. So what did I need to do here? I need to change my conception of what this power is. This power is complete and total love. There is no judgment there. When I go into meditation, whenever I'm afraid, whenever I'm being selfish, if I can get quiet and let the light shine within and let that change come to me like you described here in the reading today, then I begin to find no judgment, no fear, only love. Wow. In 25 years, I've been through the book with Charlie. I've been through the book with the elder. No one had ever shown me that exercise in the big book. It's there. He then took me to page 52. That's where the bedevilments are. He didn't have me just read them. He had me to write them out one by one by one by one. Then on the other side of that, he had me to write, what would this look like today from a recovered man's standpoint? And I began to write those bedevilments. The first one says we were having trouble with personal relationships. He said, I want you to look at your personal relationship with God. I want you to look at your personal relationship with your wife. Because if you're holding secrets from your wife, then you're holding secrets from God. Your relationship is measured with God is measured by your relationship with your wife. You treat her right, your life is right with God. It just is. And from there unfolds everything else. He wanted me to write about my relationship with my children. Now I'm old enough to have grandchildren. I've been here this long. My coworkers, my brothers and sisters in recovery, the list goes on and on. So I did all the stuff that he asked me to do. Then we moved into step 3. This time I seen something different. I began to see the self, the manifestation of self. The book on page 60, it talks about our actor. Now, I always thought that was me. I would tell you, absolutely, that's me. Yeah, that's me. That's me. That's me. That's not me. That's a condition of mind that lives as me. As long as I don't take action based on the thoughts that it throws to me, there is no reality. All I need to do is what it says in step 10, turn from that to someone else. That goes away, and I begin to condition my life in a different way. So here's what happened. We started reading through that, and I see that our actor is plural. That's not singular. That's plural. So that's talking about something that is not me. But that's a state of mind that I have lived with my whole damn life. How the hell am I going to change that? Change being the key word in what you read here today. So we read through that. You know, look at the capital H's. He may be kind. He may be considerate. He isn't talking about me. It's talking about him. However, my actions do support what he is throwing at me because I'm the one doing it. He has no arms or legs, so he uses me. I'm the transportation for this self, this condition of mind. We get to page 62. I begin to see what he's been teaching me all along: selfishness, self-centeredness, not drugs, not alcohol, not booze, not lust, not food. Selfish self-centeredness, that's the root. And a root is something what derives from all else. What you feed that is what grows. So it says, we have made decisions based on self. If you circle the word we, you circle the word self, you see that they're completely different. They're not the same. But see, I don't know that, so I'm living as that. That's to change shortly. We'll get to the bottom of page 62. Most people think the decision, the prayer, is in step 3 on page 63, but it's not. It's on page 62. It says, next, hereafter, in this drama of life, we decided. That sounded like a decision to me. That God was going to be our director. Hell, if he's not been the director, who the hell has? You know, it's been the condition of mind that lives as me. All I need to do is recover from this. I will recover from it all. No doubt. No doubt. See, the miracle isn't only that I haven't drank whiskey today. I haven't even thought about it. The miracle isn't only that I haven't slept with other women other than my wife today. The miracle is I haven't even wanted to. I haven't even thought about that. You know why? Because I see those thoughts when they arise. I do what page 84 says. I turn. So anyway, we jump into inventory shortly thereafter. He asked me to say the prayer on page 63, and he says, remember, there is no amen at the end of that prayer. So don't say amen, because anytime you say amen in a spiritual realm and a prayer, it closes it out. That prayer is not closed out until we get to page 76, 13 pages later. Everything we do moving forward from here on is going to be done with prayer and action, prayer and action, prayer and action. We'll get to page 64. It supports it again. Being convinced that self, not drugs, not alcohol, not lust, not booze, not David, self, manifest in various ways. That is what has defeated me. We're going to consider its common manifestation. It says resentment's the number one offender from it, talking about resentment, which is a common manifestation of self. There's where all the spiritual disease lies. See, I'm running around trying to heal my spirit. There's nothing wrong with my spirit. My spirit is God. If that's sick, I'm screwed. Big time. That's not the case. Read that closely, because it talks about spiritual disease. From it, resentment, which is common manifestation of self, stem all forms of spiritual disease. For not only have we been mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. I'm not spiritually sick because of my spirit. I'm spiritually sick because of a human condition called self. And if I can learn how to turn away from those thoughts when they come at me, I'm not going to take action based on them. There's going to be no reality. There's going to be emotional sobriety and recovery. And I'm going to think more about you than me. And by God, that's what's happened. So in step 4, I'm not writing about who I am. I used to say that all the time. Oh, I found out who I am through step 4. No, I didn't find out who I am. I found out who I'd become based on a narrative that had taught me and conditioned me to believe that that's who I was. That's not who I am. I promise you. I didn't wake up today thinking that shit. Why? Because I'm closer to God. The man with me shortly thereafter, we went through the fears and the inventories, and I don't have time to break that all down. If you want to go to YouTube or Spotify, David G. We Do Recover AA. I mean, all of it's there. I've done the entire big book, kind of like we're talking about. So anyway, we sit down, we do the 5th step. There's qualifications for the man to do the 5th step with. Obviously, that needs to be our sponsor, but it gives us a way to qualify that. I don't have time to go into that, but one of the things that says we will be, more inclined when discussing our defects with another person. If you look at that on page 72. So I started, throwing out all of this filth and bullshit. And he said, I don't want to hear that. Went on a little further. He said, I don't want to hear that. And I said, well, why the hell am I here then if you don't want to hear that? And he took me there, and if you'll look at it, it's the middle of the page, on page 72, if you have a book. It says, this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. He said, I don't give a damn about all the shit you did. What I care about is what drove you to do those things. That's the exact nature of your wrong. See, I'd been conditioned completely different, even in Alcoholics Anonymous, but my book makes it very clear right there what the discussion portion of that's going to be. So we move on over. We get to the promises of the 5th step. Y'all know them. Popular pride, go to it, eliminate, never twist character, and you go on and you read a little bit, and it says that it makes a hell of a statement here. It says our fears begin to fall from us. And I hear people in the program say it all the time, I'm working on my fear. Well, good. Let me know how that works out, because you're probably working on it with the same damn thing that caused you to have it to begin with, if you're like me. It doesn't say we work on our fears. It says our fears fall from us. We begin to know the nearness of our Creator, and so it says we may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now, keyword now, we're going to have an experience. So it's telling me that the transformation that you read about in Bill's story today is going to begin to take root for me right here. I mean, it has been all along, but nothing like it is right here. Now I'm going to have an experience, not just a belief. A belief without any action is just a belief. I can believe I'm going to get up and go in there and use the restroom or whatever it is, but unless I get up off my ass and take some steps and go in here and open the door and do this and that, I'm just going to sit right here and believe that. I've got to take action based on the belief. And that's what I begin to do. And if you read that at the bottom of 75, it says, we will be walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. Now, I only thought that was while we were at step 5. No. If I'm not doing that with these remaining steps, I'm trying to do that with what caused me to need to work these steps to begin with, and that's a condition of mine, the human condition called self. So at the bottom of 75, it asks me some questions. I'm going to go home, get quiet for an hour. I'm going to review what I've done. Thank God. Take the book down from the shelf, turn to the page which contains the 12 steps, page 59. I'm going to carefully read the first 5 steps. He called them proposals. When I asked if I've omitted anything, I'm building an arch. Are the stones properly in place? Remember, the stones are on page 47. Those are the cornerstones. If you read about that, you get to page 63, you read about the keystone. These are the stones. Is 2 and 3 in place properly? Are they there? Are we trying to make mortar without sand? Am I going to meetings and not practicing the steps? Am I doing the steps and not going to meetings? How is things with my family? Am I coming and talking a good game to you and then treat my wife like shit, or the waitress down at the diner? Yeah. Some things to look at. We get to step 6. It says on page at the top of 76, if we'll look at the last sentence there, if we cling to something we will not let go, we ask God. See, we hear a lot about the 7-step prayer, but we don't hear much about the 6-step prayer. That's the 6-step prayer right there. We ask. Anytime I see those two words in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that's a prayer. We ask God to help us be willing. If I'm suffering from lust, God, help me be willing to let it go. Even if I act out again, help me be willing to let it go. Help me be willing. Help me be willing. Help me be willing. And it's going to come. Eventually it will come. May not be pretty when it comes, but it'll come. And then look at the 7-step prayer. Here's where the amen is. It wasn't at step 3. It's here. And it says, I'm now ready. You should have all of me, good and bad. See, the bad drives me to God. The good drives me away. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character. Here's the key words, which stand in the way. See, he's not going to take them all. And I shouldn't expect that. The book doesn't say that. He says, the ones that stand in the way of my usefulness, to you and my fellows, grant me strength as I go out from here. It says, then we've completed step 7. Well, where I came from, you don't ever complete the steps. No, you don't complete the steps. You never graduate. And I believe that to be true. Our book's not saying that. It's saying you have now completed the body of work. You have went from love to hate. You have changed. You are a new man. The man that I was in the first 5 steps will not be the same man that I am in the last 7. A new man has now emerged. I'm walking free. I'm no longer doing the shit that I once did to hurt people. I don't even think that way today. Thank God. I've started then at that time to recover from a hopeless state of mind today I had. When I say I'm a recovered alcoholic, I am a recovered alcoholic. It says we need more action. Talks about steps 8 and 9. He had me to rifle through my inventory. Look real closely at what it says in the book. If you're new on here, don't miss this. Don't miss this. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we had harmed to whom we are willing to make amends. Look at those next, 7 words. We made it when we took inventory. Anybody tells you to burn your inventory after you do the 5th step, get rid of their ass because they're not living by what the big book Alcoholics Anonymous says. I done that one time and I paid for it dearly. This time I didn't do that. I held on to that. I rifled back through that inventory for my amends list. I said in prayer with the rest of it. And now it was time for me to go out and start making these amends. And that's exactly what I did. I completed all of my amends. There was one amend that I couldn't do because it would bring more harm than still doing so. And I had to let that one go, but I can promise you I stand ready to do it today. What happened to me as a result of that, man, it rocketed me into this 4th dimension that Bill talks about. I began to practice steps 10 and 11 with a way that I never had. Page 84. This is where I start my people day one. Day one. People tell me all the time, you can't do that, David. That's not the way it's outlined in the book. Bullshit. Yes, it is. Look at what it says on 84. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests that we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. But look at the sentence carefully. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So as we clean up the past in the first 9 steps as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we should have been doing that step all along. Go read the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. Look at what the first 100 men did. They always started with self-examination, prayer, and meditation. That's steps 10 and 11 as outlined in our book. If you don't know how to watch what it is that's defeating you, how in the hell are you going to overcome that when you're hung up in the middle of step 4 and the crazies are all over you? What are you going to do? Call my sponsor? Hell, I'm beyond human aid. He's a great help. Don't get me wrong. But he's not going, and he can talk me off the ledge from time to time, but I can promise you he can't save my ass. He can't. Because that says continue to watch. The very next one says, we ask God at once, not my sponsor, not go to a meeting, not this, not that. There's 5 things it's asking me to do on 84, and this is what I have my guys do. Look at what it says. Continue to watch. Ask God. Discuss with another person. Make amends quickly. Turn your thoughts to someone you can help. So in short, it's like this. Watch, ask, discuss. Make amends. Turn your thoughts. It's good if I can be of action and help somebody, but that's not what it's asking me to do. It's asking me to turn my thoughts to someone I can help. Turn away from that shit that's coming at me, the lust, the anger, the resentment, the fear, whatever it is that's consuming me. Turn from that. Turn. And there's ways that we do that. I don't have time to go into that. Lastly, I want to talk about step 11 here real quick with the last minute I have. Today I practiced 2-way prayer and meditation the same way the first 100 did. Today I'm a Christian. I do believe in Christ. Not that you better hurry up and get over here and all that bullshit. No, that's all religion. I have a walk today. I read something spiritual. I write down every thought that comes to me. Then I go back and match that against the four absolutes once that flow stops. What does that look like? The ones that don't line up with absolute honesty, absolute love, absolute unselfishness, absolute purity, I cross it out. Whatever's left, that's what God's will for me is. Then I need prayer for the power to carry it out. Today I work with many, many men. I don't have time to go into step 12. I wish I did, but I don't. But I work with many, many men. Now there is a process on page 90. That's the interview process. Please do that always before you agree to sponsor someone. I'm out of time. My lovely wife is awake and I want to listen to you folks. So thank you to come and share. Good to be here with you, Andrew. Thank you for your service, brother.